How's it going out there, everybody? This is Joel Myers, aka Jolex. Jolex, not a self-applied name, it's a nickname. We can get into how that came about maybe in a later episode. Today I'm going to have you in the studio, show you some of my random opal encasements that I put into a piece I call Oops All Berries. First, I want to give a shout to Harley, though, with the Cam on the Pipe Dreams YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to Pipe Dreams on YouTube. So going into the shop here, working on a cabochon with all opals instead of planets on the inside of it. So gonna start off by heating the disc a little bit and going into some opal encasements. Gonna interject with some stories though, and kind of cover exactly how my style came about and how I came into glass blowing and everything. So we're gonna begin in, let's see, 1986. I was 7 years old. I was visiting my grandparents and my aunt and uncle and cousins in Dearborn, Michigan. And Dearborn, Michigan, there's this special place called Greenfield Village. And at Greenfield Village, they have it's kind of like a craft village. There's a blacksmithing studio, a glass blowing studio, a tin studio, a loom studio. There's all, and like a ceramic studio. They do a lot of different stuff there. But I took a particular liking to the glass blowing this time that I visited. There was a lady making a glass mug. Saw her putting a handle on the glass mug. This is in like a hot shop environment. She put the handle on and it looked like a perfect glass mug, like one that was my parents drank coffee out of, that you put in the cupboard, you know. And she went to finish it. She tapped the punty off the bottom, which is the thing that kind of holds it while you're finishing the top of the cup, and the whole bottom broke out of it, and it fell off onto the ground. And she picked it up with these tongs and put it in a keg that had it was like a metal keg that had the top cut off of it. It just went in the trash. And I was like, what's next? What do you do next? You know, and at 7 years old, that kind of sparked my interest as to, you know, what I was going to get into when I was older. And already being a pyromaniac, it sounded like the right idea at the time. Fast forward to high school, I started taking welding classes, and I discovered that you could take this welding class at Interlake High School in Bellevue. You could do it from, instead of starting when the rest of school started at 7 a.m., you could start at 6 a.m. and take an hour of welding before the first class of the day, which again was welding. So I took 2 hours of welding every morning before going to normal school. You know, being the first guy in the parking lot, this could afford you certain freedoms at that time. We're talking early 90s. So every young man at that time was looking for an empty parking lot. I learned how to play with fire and grind and cut and use regulators and gas welding equipment and TIG welding and MIG welding and stuff, and ended up graduating high school. Started working at this place called Allied Steel Fabricators in Redmond, Washington. And what they did was they built all the metal stuff that you see inside of Nordstrom's, all the Nordstrom stores across the United States, which I'm sure in this time are kind of dying out. I wonder if they're having a surplus sale. Anyway, built all this stuff for Nordstrom's, and I would sneak in there after hours and build stuff, just glass tools related. Because in that time when I was working at Nordstrom, in my neighborhood there was this little glass studio, and I took a little interest to what those guys were doing. So we're talking 1999 here. I lived in a neighborhood in the U District in Seattle. There was a studio, a pipe studio called the Seattle Connection. It was run by this dude, let's call him Jim. There was a few dudes that worked there, Jared Betty being being one of these dudes that I really looked up to in this time in 1999 when I was just starting out. And you know, being a 19-year-old kid from Bellevue, and I didn't know what a tweaker was, or what crystal meth was, or what that did to a person. So I would watch these guys. They would be up, not all the people I mentioned, but the people whose names I'm not going to mention. They were up all hours of the night. They make 10 hammers and 10 sidecars and 10 spoons and 10 bubblers, and be like, how are you making all this stuff like all through the night? Like I had no idea. I thought they were just like drinking these really big coffees, which in the U District there was 24-hour coffee places. So I ended up taking this basically apprenticeship from this guy. He's got me in there working 8 hours a day plus, you know, and I'm learning how to blow glass. It's cool. He's got me under at what at that time was a formal pipe making apprenticeship, where they supply all the materials, they supply all the glass, they supply all the gas, they supply all the stuff. Basically, once you got to a point where you could sell your work, you would give half of it to them and you get to keep half. So this summer, in the summer of 99, when I was giving glass to this dude Jonathan, he would take it and sell it all and come back with new shirt, new shoes, new pants, and like a pizza and some breadsticks to feed us with, because he wasn't paying us for any of the glass of ours that he was selling. And so this went on for a while, and I just kind of like took it. And the summer of 99, there's this scuffle that happened with Jonathan and this dude on the roof at our studio, and he took the dude down. Dude came back and slashed all of our tires and stole all of our torches out of the studio and all this shit. And that was my first kind of like foray into the glass blowing scene, like the first year of my exposure to it. So I ended up moving out of this situation, and in 2000 I moved into this studio called Blow It Out Your Glass, and this was a studio on Aurora at 103rd and Aurora in Seattle, and it's run by this dude named Jack, and there was a few other dudes there that were pretty cool. Scotty, this gal named Kim, my roommate at the time Justin Treppel, and then this dude Ricky Lee. And Ricky Lee was deaf, but he was a cool dude to work with. That was some tumultuous times just because we're up on Aurora, and that's kind of like one of the scuzzier areas in any town is that one road, you know, that runs all the way through the place. So that nothing crazy went down at that place, but it was still a stepping stone. 2001, I went to go work at this place called GF Hetty's, and this was a studio on the corner of, it was 41st, 42nd. There was about 16 glass benches in this shop. Some of the people there: Kevin Nail, Marble Slinger, MNP, Purple, this dude Jeff Wilhoit, good old friend, Jason Sullivan, Cam Tower used to come through there and visit and stuff, and old homies Ease and Space. That place I eventually kind of grew out of also, and a lot of people moved out of there. I moved on. Really took a lot of inspiration from Max Paulin though, and that's what you're seeing in these videos here, what I'm doing with these big discs of clear glass. When I'm putting the planets and the opals into them, you're really getting the mainstay of my inspiration from MNP glass. You know, he crushed it with blown color sections and doing big disc attachments to his pieces back in the day. So that's kind of what helped develop the Jolex look as it is today, and as you're seeing in this video. Moving on in the years, 2001, I blew glass at home in Lake City. I had this house and I had a studio there, and I was working with this dude Ben Wilson. Not Ben Wilson, not the brother of Luke Wilson. Different Ben Wilson. Ben Wilson of Washington. And one day we were both working, and this was during the Inside Out Flare days. We were always drawing lines and doing dots on the insides of flares and stuff like that to do inside out work. So when you're drawing lines down the inside of something, it's important to get them all completed. So looking over at Ben this one morning, like, hey man, quit kicking the bench. And he looked over at me at the same time, was saying like, quit, like to say the same thing, like quit moving the bench. And immediately it became apparent to both of us that there was an earthquake going on. And so he's on the last line of his flare, drawing this stringer down the inside of a flare, and I'm running to the kiln. I throw my stuff in the kiln, and by that time stuff's bouncing back and forth in the kiln. I turn the gas off, turn the oxygen off. The oxygen tank is bouncing up like boing, 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 boing. And I run outside the shop, and the lawn is going in waves, like the wave pool. And cat runs across the lawn, meow. Dog's all barking. And I run outside the house. It looks like my house is the epicenter of this earthquake, just like chunk. And meanwhile, the gas runs out, and Ben's last line on his last stringer on the last line of the flare he was doing splits off. So he's like, fuck! And by the time he gets to the kiln, he opens the kiln, and the earthquake's going so bad that all the glass we made that day starts just like pouring out of the kiln when he opened it to put his flare in there. And when the shaking subsided, we cleaned up the mess. We knew we had a good story to tell for years after that. I still do have a couple of pieces that survived that earthquake. Let's see, moving on. In 2007, I had a studio in Georgetown in Seattle. And this dude that my shopmate, we would always leave our shop rent at the bottom of the stairs so the landlord would come in and pick it up. Well, this one dude that we knew had a problem with keeping his hands and his things to himself, and one day he ended up walking down the stairs and noticing an envelope full of $500, and just $500, and he grabbed it. And we were already in trouble with our landlords, and this dude stole our rent money off the fucking stairs. And I confronted him about it because he was the only person in there that day, and he started telling me some stories, like he couldn't believe that I told his bosses about him and stuff like that. And I was like, what are you talking about, your bosses? And he's like, yeah, I work, you know who I work for, and I know you told them. And I was like, I didn't tell anybody anything about this. And apparently he ended up saying that he worked for the Eastern Bloc mob, and that he was going to get punished for being part of what they call kid stuff. In this case, kid stuff being stealing $500 off the stairs. And so when I get to his house, the guy, I knock on the door, he's not coming. Knock on the door, he's not coming. Like 3 minutes later, he opens the door, and he's got a towel on his head. He's holding it with his hand, and there's blood like blasting out of it, like dripping the fuck out of it, like gushing. Like seriously, I'd never seen I'd never seen anything like that before. And he told me that thugs came by, and since they heard that he was involved with stealing $500, that they came and pistol whipped him with his own pistol, and that's just how big of a fucking liar this dude was. He actually pistol whipped his own ass in his own head just to fucking validate his story in some weird way. So Anyway, that was the end of that studio. I didn't work at that place anymore after dude pulled off the most epic pistol whipping of all time. Most epic personal pistol whipping ever. 2012, moving on, I was really starting to dig my heels into the space tech that I'm doing now. I had worked at this point for a number of years in the hot shop doing soft glass work, and a lot of times working with different consistencies of frit and powders and stuff like that, which is kind of how I developed the planetary look that I work with quite a bit. And the opals were just kind of like an accent to the planetary work that I had developed. Gonna close out here with just basically some info about the process that I'm working on here. A lot of times I'll take as much glass off of each opal as I can and kind of sink it in there. I'm just trying to heat more the clear glass itself instead of the opal, and trying to push the opal itself into the clear glass that I'm using. A lot of times it's easy to overheat the opal. This way that I'm doing it, it's easy to crack the opal more by pushing too hard with the paddle than it is to actually overheat it. So when you see me pushing these opals into these flat sections, you can't really see it because the camera adds 10 degrees just the same way that it adds 10 pounds, you know. You can't really see how hot I have to get it to push the opal in there, but I feel like you get a good shot, especially right here, of how hot you can get the stuff without burning them out. And I think that's going to close out the video pretty much for y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks, Harley, for having me. And make sure to tune in to that Pipe Dreams YouTube channel. Peace.